The day it happened was one of those heavy, sweltering summer mornings where the air sat thick as syrup and the world seemed to move in slow motion. Cicadas screaming from the trees and the sun already hammering down before noon. And I were on the porch, rocking quietly in old wooden chairs, sipping sweet tea, and listening to the stillness of the countryside when a sudden unnatural growl split the calm. At first I thought it was someone's lawnmower, but as the sound grew sharper, metallic and angry, my stomach sank. It was a chainsaw, roaring far too close to our front fence. Grandpa's chair creaked as he leaned forward, his weathered eyes narrowing, and together we rose to see what had stirred up the peace. Out at the end of the gravel drive, 3 men in bright neon safety vests stood like they owned the place, faces smug, hands busy, and right in front of them. Sparks and wood chips sprayed as one of them pressed the spinning chain straight through. Our gate. That gate wasn't just a gate. It was a piece of my grandfather's soul. He had built it himself decades ago out of heavy iron and oak, welding and carving after long nights in the barn when he first came back from overseas. For him, it wasn't just about keeping cattle in or nosy neighbors out. It was about marking a line, a piece of history, a reminder that this land had been earned, kept, and respected. And now, these clipboard warriors, these self-appointed compliance officers of the HOA patrol, were hacking it apart like it was scrap wood at a lumberyard. As we walked closer, their voices carried across the yard, smug and certain. One of them barking, "Community guidelines prohibit private gates. This violation has been recorded and removal is mandatory." Another laughed, shaking his head like he was doing us a favor by tearing down what we owned. I glanced at Grandpa, expecting him to shout, to argue, to tell them the same thing he had told countless bureaucrats before, that his land wasn't theirs, that their rules stopped where his fence began. But Grandpa didn't waste breath on people who couldn't hear reason. His jaw clenched, the lines on his face settling into something older, heavier, and more dangerous. Without a word, he turned, his boots grinding against the gravel as he walked back toward the shed. I followed him halfway, asking what he was going to do, but he just lifted a hand. The kind of quiet command that said I'd find out soon enough. Moments later, the shed door creaked open, and when he stepped back into the sunlight, I saw it gleaming across his arms, the unmistakable silhouette of a belt-fed M60. The kind of weapon most people only knew from movies, but one he knew intimately. As naturally as a carpenter knows a hammer, the long steel barrel caught the light, the ammo belt draped like a rattlesnake ready to strike, and for a second I felt the weight of history press down on the yard. This wasn't bluster, wasn't a bluff. This was Grandpa reminding the world, in the most direct way possible, that some things were not negotiable. As he strode forward with that calm, unhurried gait of his, the chainsaw's roar suddenly sounded small, petty, almost ridiculous compared to the quiet authority of the man, carrying a piece of history across his arms. The so-called enforcers hadn't noticed him yet. Too busy congratulating themselves on the compliance they thought they were achieving, but I knew the moment they turned around, the entire tone of this showdown was about to change. The men with the chainsaw were still laughing when Grandpa stepped out from behind me. The sound of their voices cut short like a record needle scratching across vinyl. They froze mid-motion, one of them holding the saw halfway through the gatepost, the others standing with clipboards and smug smirks that melted as soon as their eyes fell on the weapon across Grandpa's arms. The M60 wasn't pointed, wasn't even raised, but its presence was louder than any threat could have been. The barrel gleamed in the sun, the belt of brass cartridges dangling like a banner of authority. And in that instant, every ounce of arrogance drained from the patrol's faces. The tallest one cleared his throat, trying to play it off, but his voice wavered like a man standing too close to a lightning strike. "Sir, we're just enforcing community guidelines. We have the right," but Grandpa cut him off with nothing. More than his voice, low, steady, and heavy as a sledgehammer. "You don't have the right to touch what's mine. Not this gate, not this land. Put the saw down, now." It wasn't a shout, it wasn't a plate, it was a command, simple and unshakable. The kind of tone that comes from someone who's seen men live and die by, whether they listened. Slowly, as though every movement were a test of fate, The man lowered the chainsaw and let it fall silent in the dirt. His companions stepped back, their bravado crumbling into panic as they realized just how badly they had miscalculated. Didn't move forward, didn't brandish the weapon. He just stood tall, calm, and immovable, like a monument on his own soil, and let the silence do the work. The summer air felt heavier, cicadas buzzing in the trees, and I swear even the wind seemed to pause as the HOA patrol exchanged terrified glances, their earlier certainty evaporating into pure survival instinct. "We're only trying to do our jobs," one of them muttered weakly, holding his clipboard like it might shield him, but Grandpa's eyes never wavered. "Your job ends where my property begins," he said, each word measured and deliberate. "And if you think a handbook gives you the right to destroy what I've built, you've got another thing coming." For a long moment, no one breathed, the only sound the faint clink of ammo links shifting as Grandpa adjusted his grip. Then, without another word, the patrol scrambled, tripping over themselves to retreat, one of them nearly dropping his clipboard as they stumbled back to their truck. Gravel sprayed as the tires spun, their retreat loud and clumsy, till the roar of their engine disappeared down the road, leaving only the quiet hum of the countryside behind. Grandpa stood there a while longer, watching the dust settle, then lowered the M60 with a slow exhale, resting it gently against the porch rail as though it were just another tool in his collection. He didn't smile, didn't celebrate. He simply gave me a look, half warning and half amusement, and muttered, "Some people only understand respect when you remind them where it comes from." Later, as the two of us worked together to weld the damage on the gate, sparks flying into the warm evening air, I thought about how quickly their bravado had turned to fear, how flimsy their power looked when measured against the weight of real authority. By the time the sun sank and fireflies flickered in the tall grass, the gate stood strong again, scarred but unbroken, much like Grandpa himself. And I realized then that the lesson wasn't just for the HOA patrol, it was for me. 2 rules written on paper only go so far, but the kind of respect my grandfather commanded can't be printed, copied, or voted into existence. It's earned, it's lived, and when necessary, it's defended.